He declined their offer of millions of dollars. Following a covert conflict that nearly ruined James Bond, Sean Connery left the franchise permanently. He was treated like dirt by the film's executives. He was so enraged by the constant stalking by paparazzi that he gave up his whole paycheck in order to get away. He shut the door in their faces even after they pleaded with him to return with $5.5 million. We now know the unpleasant reality of his departure. On August 25, 1930, Sean Connery was born in Edinburgh, Scotland, in the Fountainbridge neighborhood. Thomas Sean Connery was his full name. Of his two sons, he was the oldest. Joseph, his father, was a truck driver and industrial worker. Euphemia, his mother, worked as a laundress. There was no indoor plumbing in their little two-room apartment in a tenement structure. Fountainbridge was a working-class area with many manufacturers and breweries. Money was always scarce, and life was difficult. Connery began working at the age of 7. He brought milk to the Cooperative Society of St. Cuthbert. He had to get up early for the work and become familiar with all of Edinburgh's shortcuts. Once, after he was well known years later, he caught a cab driver attempting to overcharge him. He surprised the driver by using his knowledge to guide him via the city's fastest route without complaining. When Neil, his younger brother, was born in 1938, his family's difficulties only got worse. Connery took on additional duties to assist. He gained the moniker Big Tam due to his rapid growth. He dropped out of school at the age of 13 to work as a milkman full-time. More than he needed an education, his family needed the money. Connery enlisted in the Royal Navy at the age of 16. His 12-year service plan did not work out as intended. He was released after only 3 years because of serious stomach ulcers. A familial history of the disorder. He had 2 tattoos while serving in the Navy, one that stated "in Dad" and the other that said "Scotland Forever." They stayed on his skin throughout his life and served as a reminder of his origins. He needed a job when he got back to Edinburgh. He accepted every job that came his way. He worked as a lifeguard at Portobello Open Air Pool, transported coal, and cleaned coffins. She even served as a naked model for Edinburgh College of painting students. He desired more, but these jobs helped pay the bills. Bodybuilding became his new hobby when he was 21. He began training with former British Army gym instructors at Edinburgh's Dunedin Weightlifting Club. He stood out due to his muscular frame and 6'2" height. He went to London to compete in the Mr. Universe contest in 1953 when he was 22 years old. He competed in the tall man division, which is for competitors who are taller than 5 feet 10 inches. He heard someone discussing South Pacific auditions when he was participating in a bodybuilding competition. Despite his lack of expertise, he took the risk. He was surprised to be given a modest part in the chorus. It didn't matter that he couldn't dance or sing. His part had expanded by the time the show made it to Edinburgh. After a while, he was promoted to Lieutenant Buzz Adams, earning £14, 10 shillings a week instead of £12. Although the additional funds were helpful, South Pacific provided him with more than simply a salary. He had talent, according to American actor Robert Henderson. He gave Connery books by Ibsen and Shakespeare to expose him to reading. Additionally, he persuaded him to enroll in elocution classes. Connery's heavy Scottish accent added to his attractiveness, but he could get additional opportunities if he smoothed it out. He became known as someone not to mess with about this period. He was robbed by 6 gang members one evening in Edinburgh. He was the only one who fought them off. The group left him alone after that. His on-screen demeanor would subsequently be shaped in part by that roughness. His acting career got off to a poor start. He portrayed Spike, a small-time mobster with a speech impairment, in No Road Back, 1957, his first movie performance with credit. Although it wasn't a significant factor, it made him known. He took on side employment to supplement his income. He even babysat journalist Peter Noble at one time. His next significant appearance was in the 1958 film Another Time, Another Place, in which he portrayed a British reporter who became involved with Lana Turner's character during a war. His major break should have come in this movie, but the most dramatic part took place off-screen. Johnny Stompanato, Turner's boyfriend, was a mobster with connections to the Los Angeles mob. He believed Turner and Connery were having an affair. He once barged onto the scene with a gun. Connery made a snap decision. Grabbing Stampanato's wrist, he twisted it until the weapon was dropped. The criminal was pulled away by security. The event garnered media attention. Some even muttered that Connery had to exercise caution in Hollywood because he had made enemies in the mob. The movie didn't make him a celebrity despite the exposure, but he wasn't prepared to give up. He was cast by the BBC in 1957 for the live television drama Requiem for a Heavyweight, which followed a boxer whose career ended because of injuries. Connery wasn't initially selected. The part had been declined by Jack Palance. Jacqueline Hill, who subsequently married director Alvin Rakoff, argued that women would find Connery attractive despite Rakoff's doubts about his acting abilities. He got the part because of it. The live performance took place on March 31, 1957. No retakes were made. Everything might be ruined by one error. Connery portrayed a boxer at the end of his career named Mountain McClintock. Both vulnerability and hardness were necessary for the job. Critics took notice when Connery delivered. His performance was hailed as one of the night's greatest by the Listener and the Times. A young Michael Caine was one of his co-stars in Requiem for a Heavyweight. They were simply two struggling actors at the time. They would work together as co-stars in The Man Who Would Be King and become great friends years later. Although it wasn't an easy voyage, Sean Connery's transformation into James Bond marked a turning moment in film history. Ian Fleming, the man behind James Bond, was not pleased with his role in Dr. No in 1962. Connery seemed too raw and unrefined to him. He had envisioned Bond as a dapper Englishman, a la David Niven or Cary Grant. Connery, with his rough appearance and Scottish accent, was the exact opposite. Fleming even questioned his ability to speak appropriate English and referred to him as an oversized stuntman. However, Harry Salzman and Albert R. Broccoli, the producers, noticed something unique. Connery stood out because to his innate charisma, which was a blend of charm and menace. Broccoli thought Connery might become the ideal Bond with the correct direction. Terence Young, the director, accepted the task. Fine eating, well-tailored clothes, and the affluent lifestyle that would characterize the role were all introduced to Connery by him. Everything changed once Dr. No was freed. Connery's Bond was adored by audiences. Rugged, self-assured, and effortlessly cool. As a tribute to Connery, Fleming altered Bond's biography in his 1964 book You Only Live Twice to include his Scottish ancestry. Connery had influenced the literary version of a character, something that rarely happened for a movie actor. His portrayal of James Bond set the benchmark, influencing the character for many years to come. Bond flicks were bolder and larger as a result of Dr. No's popularity. Goldfinger changed the game in 1964. It had iconic Bond features such as the Aston Martin DB5 and fantastical antagonists. The movie earned $125 million worldwide, which was a significant sum for the period. With underwater fight sequences and a huge budget that quadrupled that of its predecessor, Thunderball, 1965, went even farther. Connery was at the center of it all, and the action and stakes were higher. His portrayal of Bond permanently altered spy films. Prior to him, on-screen spies were either rough, unlikable men or intelligent, clever individuals. Connery combined the two. He was physically formidable, incisive, and quick-witted. He was able to maintain his cool despite handling vicious fights, outwitting adversaries, and seducing ladies. His friendship served as a model for action heroes in the future, influencing films like The Bourne Identity and Mission Impossible. Connery promoted reality as well. He frequently executed his own stunts, which was uncommon for well-known celebrities at the time. In Dr. No, he drove beneath a construction crane at great speed and barely avoided getting hurt. However, there were restrictions. He was terrified of spiders. He thereby forbade the spider from crawling on him during the filming of the well-known tarantula scene. After separating him from the beast with a glass window, the production sent in a stuntman to complete the scene. Sean Connery had become weary of playing James Bond by 1967. He has portrayed the character in 5 films, making him a worldwide celebrity. He wanted to show that he was more than simply a tuxedo-wearing spy, but the public in Hollywood wouldn't allow him. Things were made worse by the media's continual focus. He was trailed everywhere by photographers while filming You Only Live Twice in Japan. Some even went too far and took pictures of him in a lavatory. There was more to that infringement of privacy than that. It was an obvious indication that his life had lost its sense of identity. On TV, that annoyance was evident. The action sequences in You Only Live Twice were larger than ever in this enormous production. Connery, meanwhile, appeared less involved. Fans and critics also took note. He still looked the part and performed the lines, but something was lacking. Off camera, he appeared bored, according to several. It didn't get any better. The burden of being the franchise's face and the never-ending interviews wore him down. His contribution to Bond's achievement had been significant. But he was beginning to question if it was worthwhile. Another problem was money. For You Only Live Twice, Connery earned about $1 million, which was a substantial salary at the time. However, the Bond pictures were earning far more. He thought he was worthy of a larger cut. However, producers Harry Saltzman and Albert R. Broccoli declined to raise his pay. Their relationship became strained, and eventually the dispute was made public. Connery thought he wasn't worth it. In addition to making him famous, the films had taken over his life. His dissatisfaction with the post extended beyond financial gain. It had come to define him so profoundly that he despised it. "That fucking James Bond has always been something I detest," he once stated. "I want to murder him." It was more than a casual remark. It was a reflection of his desire to escape. Bond should be avoided around Connery, according to even his close buddy Michael Caine. He was unwilling to discuss it. He desired to go on. Connery made his choice after the filming was over. Bond was over for him. Finding a new actor was the only option available to the producers. George Lazenby, a model with no prior acting experience, was their choice. The move wasn't easy, though, since he featured in on Her Majesty's Secret Service in 1969. Due to disagreements with the production crew, Lazenby had already made the decision to quit by the time the film was released. He has a one-film Bond. Despite Connery's departure, the team was having trouble continuing without him. They urgently needed a fresh Bond. They searched elsewhere since Roger Moore was filming The Persuaders. John Gavin, an American actor, was even named the new 007 by them. However, David Picker, the head of United Artists, had a different idea. He was aware that the magic could only be restored by a single performer. Connery was what he desired. Following You Only Live Twice in 1967, Connery had departed the franchise. He was sick of being typecast and angry with the creators. He was not planning to return. However, Picker made a direct offer to Connery and his agency after circumnavigating producers Albert R. Broccoli and Harry Saltzman. One of the largest transactions in Hollywood history ensued. Connery consented to return in exchange for a $1.25 million payment that broke all previous records. To put it in context, it exceeded Dr. No's whole 1962 budget. Additionally, he received 12.5% of the movie's box office earnings. Connery ended up with an extra $14 million since Diamonds Are Forever brought in $116 million at the box office. 2 United Artists-backed non-Bond films were also part of the agreement. Above all, Connery wouldn't have to deal with Broccoli and Saltzman throughout production. The studio quickly began marketing his comeback. They made it apparent that Sean Connery had returned. Fans were more excited as trailers and posters highlighted his return. But there was a problem. Connery appeared older. He slowed down. His portrayal lacked the vigor of his previous Bond flicks. The spark was gone when he delivered the lines. Viewers took notice. Critics took note. Connery had fulfilled his paid duties. However, it was evident that he had lost interest in the position. But it was surprising what Connery did with his salary check. None of it was retained by him. Rather, he founded the Scottish International Education Trust in 1971 with his Diamonds Are Forever income. Since he had had little possibilities as a child, he wanted to assist others in avoiding similar difficulties. Talented Scots who were unable to pay for further study received financial assistance from the charity. It paid for books, tuition, travel, and other educational expenses. To launch it, Connery collaborated with individuals such as racing icon Sir Jackie Stewart. Connery made it apparent that he was done with Bond, even though the movie was a financial success. The celebrity that came with playing 007 had never appealed to him. The position seemed like a prison. And dissatisfied with the franchise's management, he instantly declined the producer's offer of $5.5 million to return for Live and Let Die in 1973. Connery didn't want anything to do with Bond, even though that was an amazing amount at the time. Although he approved of Roger Moore taking control, he didn't like the franchise's change to a lighter, more humorous tone. Decades before the movie's release, the tale behind Never Say Never Again began. It all started in the late 1950s when screenwriter Jack Whittingham and Ian Fleming collaborated with Kevin McClory to produce a James Bond film. Although their project was never completed, Fleming used their script as the basis for his 1961 book Thunderball without giving Whittingham or McClory any credit. This resulted in a significant court case in 1963. McClory maintained that the Thunderball tale was his. The court granted him permission to make films based on Thunderball, but Fleming retained the rights to the book. In 1965, McClory co-produced Thunderball with Aeon Productions. However, he was prohibited by law from directing another Bond movie for 10 years. He began preparing his own Bond film as soon as that limitation was lifted. The result of such endeavor was the 1983 Thunderball remake, Never Say Never Again. However, the film's production was not simple. Since the majority of the Bond trademarks were still under Ian's possession, McClory had to refrain from using anything that would result in further legal action. He was not permitted to utilize QM or the well-known gun barrel opening, but he was permitted to use Spectre and Blofeld. McClory continued to struggle for greater authority even after the movie came out. He claimed partial ownership of the character and contended that the cinematic link was fashioned by his script. For decades, he persisted in pursuing legal challenges even when the courts rejected his claims. He fought Aeon until 2006, when he passed away. After more than 50 years of litigation, the conflict was ultimately resolved in 2013 when his heirs sold Aeon the remaining Thunderball rights. The reappearance of Sean Connery as James Bond was one of the film's major surprises. Following Diamonds Are Forever in 1971, he had vowed never to reprise the role. However, he was unable to turn down an offer from producer Jack Schwartzman. $3 million upfront. Around $8 million today, in addition to creative control over important aspects of the movie, writing input, casting approval, and a portion of the earnings. This agreement allowed Connery the independence he had always desired, as he and Aeon had always disagreed over artistic choices. The movie was heavily influenced by Connery. He assisted in choosing Kim Basinger for Domino and Klaus Maria Brandauer for Largo. To mold the tone and dialogue, he collaborated closely with director Irvin Kershner. His previous remarks were even parroted under the title, Never Say Never Again. It was proposed by his wife, Micheline, as a reminder to never say never. Connery, who was 52 at the time, portrayed a more mature Bond than the slicker, more light-hearted one Roger Moore was playing in Octopussy. The movie made a lot of money. With a global box office total of over $160 million, it demonstrated that Connery's connection could still attract viewers. Although the film's box office performance was favorable, the production process was anything but pleasurable. There were several issues with the production behind the scenes. Despite his competence in law, Schwartzman lacked filmmaking experience. Connery and assistant director David Tomlin were left with a lot of responsibility as a result, and they had to step in to keep everything going. Another catastrophe was the script. The original author, Flash Gordon's creator Lorenzo Semple Jr., quit because of artistic disagreements. Dick Clement and Ian Lafreniere, two British authors, took over, although they had to use extraordinary caution to refrain from using any language that would result in another Eon lawsuit. Long delays resulted from the need for attorneys to review every line of communication. It was made worse by budgetary issues. A significant portion of Thunderball was made up of underwater scenes, which were costly and challenging to shoot. When it was found that Connery's body double seemed far younger than him, certain action sequences had to be res-hot. Connery was irritated by all of these failures and believed that too many of the film's participants lacked expertise or organization. Following James Bond, Sean Connery's career demonstrated he was not only a spy. Connery portrayed Jimmy Malone in Brian De Palma's criminal thriller The Untouchables in 1987. The movie follows Kevin Costner's character, federal agent Elliot Ness, as he attempted to apprehend notorious mobster Al Capone. Ness was mentored by Connery's character, a strong Irish-American police officer. He had charm and grit in his performance, putting him at the center of the movie. Critics lauded him, and audiences adored him. Connery took home the Best Supporting Actor trophy at the 1988 Academy Awards. It was his career's sole Oscar. When his name was called that evening, he was already on stage giving out an award. He received a standing ovation from the crowd for decades of outstanding performances in addition to his victory. Connery contributed his own artistic vision to The Untouchables as well. Bringing a knife to a gunfight, one of the movie's most well-known lines, wasn't even in the original draft. He made it up as he went along, and it ended up becoming one of the most cited scenes in the film. The movie made $106.2 million worldwide, making it a box office triumph. Connery joined another blockbuster 2 years later. In Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, 1989, he portrayed Henry Jones Sr. The position was ideal. Connery's portrayal of Indiana Jones' father felt like a nod to director Steven Spielberg, who had long stated that James Bond served as inspiration for the film. The movie revealed a new side of him. He portrayed a stern yet endearing professor who was fixated with the Holy Grail. One of the film's highlights was their father-son connection because of his chemistry with Harrison Ford. Connery also managed to inject humor. "She talks in her sleep," one of his most hilarious lines, was entirely spontaneous. The whole team erupted in laughter as he made it up on the fly. Spielberg preserved it in the final edit because he enjoyed it so much. The film made $474.2 million worldwide, making it the biggest grossing picture of 1989. For outstanding sound effects editing, it also took home an Academy Award. Connery had a different type of character in The Hunt for Red October the following year. A Soviet submarine captain's attempt to escape to the United States was the subject of the 1990 movie, which was based on Tom Clancy's book. Connery portrayed the strong-willed and astute leader Captain Marco Ramios. The audience didn't even wonder why a Russian submarine captain had a Scottish accent because of how well he performed. His casting nearly fell through. Klaus Maria Brandauer was initially selected for the position, but he left. After then, Connery received the script. However, a speech outlining the Cold War setting was absent because of a faxing error. Connery was prepared to reject the narrative since he didn't think it made sense without that background. He signed on when the studio fixed the mistake. The movie received an Oscar for outstanding sound editing and went on to make over $200 million worldwide. Connery had a knack for choosing blockbuster pictures, although he occasionally passed up excellent chances. The Lord of the Rings was one of the most popular. In exchange for $30 million and 15% of the movie office receipts, director Peter Jackson offered him the part of Gandalf in the trilogy. Connery might have made almost $450 million from the transaction, but he declined. Later on, he said that he just didn't get the script. He didn't understand the plot, even after reading J.R.R. Tolkien's book. Instead, Ian McKellen played the part, and his portrayal went on to become a legend. Connery later praised McKellen for his portrayal of Gandalf, expressing no remorse for his choice. He turned down other important roles as well. He also declined to portray the architect in The Matrix and John Hammond in Jurassic Park. No matter how much money was offered, he wouldn't accept a part if he didn't have a connection to the tale. Connery was becoming sick of Hollywood by the early 2000s. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, his last live-action movie, was out in 2003. The show was a complete disaster. He called filmmaker Stephen Norrington a maniac and insane during their argument. Connery attempted to modify the film in the editing room even after filming had over, but he was unable to accomplish anything. Pirates of the Caribbean, which came out the same summer, overshadowed the film. Connery became dissatisfied with the film business as a result of the unkind criticism from critics. He accepted an American Film Institute Lifetime Achievement Award in 2006 and formally declared his retirement. He didn't want to return since he was done performing. He declined Spielberg's request to reprise his role as Henry Jones Sr. in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. He said that retirement was too much joy to give up. In 2012, He voiced the main character in the Scottish animated film Sir Billy, which was his last acting credit. Connery didn't require a lavish departure, but it wasn't one either. His career was already famous. Like his on-screen personas, Sean Connery's personal life was as dramatic. In 1962, the year he played James Bond in Dr. No, he wed Australian actress Diane Silento. Their 11-year marriage was characterized by accusations of violence, jealousy, and control. In her memoirs, Oscar-nominated actress Silento subsequently claimed that Connery was angry about her achievement. She said he forced her to decline jobs and wouldn't employ domestic assistants, so she had to do everything alone. Connery and Silento divorced in 1973 after parting ways in 1971. She kept talking about the abuse she experienced after they broke up. She said that Connery became insecure and domineering due to his celebrity. Following her death in 2011, her tale came to light again, drawing attention to Connery's troubled history. At that point, Connery had been wed for more than 35 years to Micheline Roquebrune, his second wife. They got married in 1975 after meeting at a Moroccan golf tournament in 1970. Connery could hardly speak either French or Spanish, yet she was a French-Moroccan painter. They subsequently made a joke about how, at the beginning of their relationship, they used body language to communicate. They were married until 2020, when Connery passed away. In contrast to his first marriage, no abuse claims were made in public. Over the years, there were rumors of adultery, but Roquebrune never responded. Far from Hollywood, they established a peaceful life together in the Bahamas, and Connery frequently referred to her as the love of his life. Connery fought dementia in his later years. According to his wife, the illness had taken its toll, making it hard for him to recognize or speak to others. On October 31, 2020, he died quietly in his sleep at home in Nassau, Bahamas. He was 90 years old. The causes indicated on his death certificate were respiratory failure and pneumonia. His ashes were interred in Scotland at unidentified sites 2 years later, in 2022, as a tribute to the nation he cherished. Connery was nonetheless regarded as one of the most renowned performers of his day in spite of the scandals. Queen Elizabeth II knighted him in 2000 in recognition of his services to Scottish culture and film. Connery donned full Highland regalia, including the MacLeod tartan, for the ceremony, which was held at Holyrood Palace in Edinburgh. He went on to say that it was one of my proudest days ever. Connery's popularity remained strong even in his latter years. He was 59 years old when People magazine declared him the sexiest man alive in 1989, making him the oldest person to hold the title. "It's all downhill from here," he remarked, laughing when questioned about it. He demonstrated that charm was more important than age when he was awarded the sexiest man of the century 10 years later, at the age of 69. He had an unparalleled on-screen presence. Connery was one of just 7 real cinematic stars in the world, according to director Steven Spielberg. He possessed an enduring, legendary persona, something that very few performers ever accomplish.